Well, hey there, folks. Welcome to the Roundup. We are a Cowboy State Daily podcast, and our focus is on interesting people in the Cowboy State. And wow, you want to talk about interesting. My guest today has so many stories, it would fill a dozen, 2 dozen podcasts. So we're going to figure out how to narrow down the scope of today's podcast's guests' experience and stories, because there's so many things that Brent Weigner can teach all of us. But I'm going to first tell you about a podcast that if you're a business person in Wyoming that you need to know about. It's the Wyoming Business Alliance Business from the Basement podcast. If you're a business person, this is a place for resources, for connections, for networking. If you want to know about how to become a better business person, the Wyoming Business Alliance Business from the Basement podcast is the place to go. Find it wherever you located this podcast or your other favorite podcasts. But don't go there first. First, you're going to stay here because you want to hear this conversation with one of the most interesting people, not just in the Cowboy State, but in the world of marathon running, in the world of education. Brent Weigner is one of the most interesting people because he has been running since he was a small child, and he has taken that running and he's made that into a lifelong, can I say obsession, Brent? Is that right? Are you obsessed with running? Passion. That sounds much better than obsession. It really does. But Brent, you have been running since you were a small child, but since you began running, you have not quit. In fact, you have run more than 200 marathons in more than 200 countries. You have run more than, are you closing in on 400 marathons?
403 at this point.
Oh, see, you've run 403 marathons in your life, plus 35 years of teaching middle school geography, middle school social studies to kids and inspiring them to become runners and travelers. And I just think, Brent, that is fantastic. Brent, you're a Cheyenne guy. You've been a teacher in Cheyenne forever. Tell us first about your teaching career, because I think that sets us off into great directions.
Okay, well, thank you, Wendy, for having me on. I love to talk about running, teaching, just life in general, talk about my faith as well. So I never thought I would end up being a teacher. Only reason I went to college was to run, because I scored like a 17 on my ACT. My counselor told me that I wasn't college material, that I should go to trade school or join the military. And then I ended up getting the scholarship to Greeley and went there and changed my major 3 or 4 times. Then I went to law school and I decided that wasn't for me. And then I dropped out of law school and decided, well, I think I like teaching, because I was working at the YMCA and teaching swimming at the Warren Air Force Base for the youth center. And so it kind of morphed into that. And before I got hired full time, I actually did substitute teaching K through 12. I would teach any subject and any grade level.
Wow, no kidding. So that's what piqued your interest in teaching. Why did you decide on history and geography?
Well, I taught world geography primarily, and I actually ended up teaching at the community college for a while. I taught at the University of Wyoming, taught a lot of different places and different things. But I focused on world geography because when I was in high school, between my junior and senior year, my German teacher took us on a trip to Germany. And I couldn't afford that. And so I asked my mom and dad, and they said, well, if you raise half the money, we'll pay for the other half. And so we were ranchers. We raised Black Angus cattle and quarter horses. And so I sold 3 of my Black Angus cows, $200 a head. This is 1967. And
wow.
So that was enough. And so I spent a month in Dusseldorf, Germany at a Jugendherberge, and then a month in Seefeld, Austria. And that experience just ruined me for life.
I like that. Ruined you. I'm not sure. I either ruined you or set you up. Which one?
Yeah, it just piqued my interest in traveling. And after that, I was 100% in to do that. And then between my junior and senior year in college, I I lived in Munich, University of Munich, and because I'd taken German in high school and I'd taken it in college, and I maxed out all the hours I could take in Greeley, and so my counselor said, "Well, if you do a study abroad, you can get 15 hours, and that'll be enough to get your minor in German." And so that's
All
how I ended up.
right. So you started though with this passion for travel, translated that into a career as a teacher. But running was always throughout this. And how did you get started running and marrying these two passions?
Oh boy, I think when we grew up north of town on Riding Club Road, and as kids, we play games like ditch 'em and hide and go seek and all kinds of running games. We would actually have contests to see who could chase down a horse and halter it. And so we let them out.
Oh
We let
my.
them out. We let them out in a huge fenced area, many acres. And then everybody would have a halter, and someone would say, "Go and be the judge." And whoever got the horse first and put a halter on it was the winner. And
Hey, well, that seems right.
so I was kind of a horse whisperer back in the day, and we probably had uh, over the years close to 2 dozen quarter horses. And I was a rodeo kid. Um, Most of my friends were cowboys. Helped Chris Ledoux build his first bucking barrel.
No way.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, and we we got paid $100 uh, for pictures and an article in Western Horseman. So this is 1967. So that was a
That's
lot
good money
back.
then.
Yeah, and it was right across the street from where we lived on Riding Club Road, because Yellowstone used to be called Meriden Route. And right across the road was the Frontier Roping and Riding Club. So in the summer, there would always be at least 6 rodeos that we participated in. We'd ride yearling Brahma bulls, bucking ponies. Um, so that kind of morphed into the cowboy lifestyle. And then I worked at Frontier Park in the summer, taking care of the committee's horses and the visiting queen's horses. So I'd get about 3 hours of sleep a night during Frontier days. So
My goodness. So you got a long history there as well.
yeah, and it everything kind of blended and worked out in terms of my obsession with running, because when I started teaching, all that stuff stayed. And so I think I was unique in a way, because I always thought that education, a lot of it took place outside the four walls of the classroom. And so I would take kids overseas. In the summer, we took kids to New Zealand, Australia, Mexico, Washington, D.C. My favorite trip was we took them to the former Soviet Union when they still had bread lines. And
No kidding.
yeah, and so kids remember that. Kids remember that kind of trip. I remember we flew a 45-minute flight from Helsinki, Finland, to Leningrad. Well, it's St. Petersburg now, but it was Leningrad at the time. And then we took the train to Moscow. I remember the guards with the long mirrors looking under the train cars to make sure no one was hitching a ride. Um, and so that was really a unique experience. And then on top of that, with my coaching, uh, I coached year round. So after the season was over, I took kids to junior Olympic meets, to take them to track meets, take them to road races, cross country meets. Um, One of my
They were your
bragging,
kids.
yeah,
They were your
they were,
kids.
yeah. My
Yeah.
bragging point, my favorite thing about the coaching, well, I have lots of them, but one I think will never be broken was I founded the girls cross country teams at Cheyenne Central High School and at McCormick. And because back in the day, they thought, if girls or women ran, it would harm their reproductive system. And so the first year at Central, I had 2 girls out for cross country. And then I was there for 3 years, and then I was at McCormick for the rest of my career. And so when I retired, my McCormick girls, had won the city and the conference championship for 32 years straight.
Oh my word, Brent. What an accomplishment.
And then after the season, we continue running. And so I took my 17-18 Junior Olympic girls to the Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs. Um, the summer before, we hosted the national championship at Little America. And this is back, you could take kids and you didn't need chaperones. Just me and the girls, staying on the campus at the Olympic Training Center and convince them, that they were the real deal. And so when nationals came around, we weren't even on the radar. We just out of clear blue, we won. And so Olympic gold medalist John Neighbor was at the awards ceremony. He gave the medals.
Whoa.
And so I was always looking for opportunities, to blend my running with my teaching, with my coaching, and of course with my running too, because I would, if it was a meet where I could run, I would do that. For example, we took a couple of kids, Kevin Carl Pfefferly, I think, and my friend Larry Heidebrecht. We ran the first U.S.-Mexico International Marathon in El Paso and Juarez. And so we drove down there, and we were one short of having a team. We had to have 5 runners. And so I do what I think great coaches do. You recruit or you lie. And so I just go around talking. I saw these 2 kids. They looked like they were runners. They had just graduated from Tucson High School. And so I said, well, what kind of times you guys running? And when they told me, I said, hey, you want to be on our team? And so we won the first U.S.-Mexico marathon. And the Mexican national team had 2 Olympians on their team. But their third, fourth, fifth place guys, their end guys kind of sucked. And so all 5 of us ran sub 3-hour marathons. And so we had got a nice article in the paper. And 13 miles was in El Paso, go over the International Bridge into Juarez, and then the last 13 in Juarez, and then we finished at the Chamizal National Monument.
What year was that? Because I imagine that it was as scary then as it is now.
No, it wasn't bad back then. At least from my perspective, what I remember as kind of a nuisance, once we got into Mexico, the kids are running along beside us trying to sell us cigarettes or gum. And then the buses, we're on the roads, and then the buses just going by, pulling out, spewing diesel fumes, and you're trying not to suck those in. And the club that sponsored the marathon had an interesting name. They were called the Half Fast Running Club.
Good.
Fast running.
Okay.
Fast. Okay, you get it.
Okay, I get it.
I hate to have to explain my jokes, but
I know. I hate to be the one you have to explain them to. Okay, God, just had to say it fast enough. That's all.
Oh, here's another fun running and coaching story. So I had 2 junior high kids, 7th graders, that qualified for nationals out in Gresham, Oregon. And so I had a piece of crap Volkswagen. The starter was broken. And so we'd have to push the Volkswagen to get it started. And we didn't have any money. So one of the kids, Jeff Holloman's dad, Israel Holloman, loaned us his tent trailer. And so Jeff was going to run the 400, 800 nationals, and David Weaver was going to run the 2-mile. So we took us a couple days to get out there, and the boys got kind of aggravated with me because he said, Coach, can you park in the back of the, wherever we were? Because it's embarrassing having
a little embarrassing.
Push the car. Yeah. So we get out there. They did really well, and they're wanting to stay and play tourist. And I said, well, you need to call your parents and see if they're cool with that, because it was just me and the 2 boys sleeping in the tent trailer. And so you call your parents, see what they think. And both the parents said, okay, you can do that. And I thought, terrific. I said, okay, guys, we could, but we have no money. Oh, Coach, we can get a job. I said,
Excuse me?
We can. I said, really? How are we going to get a job? Well, hey, one of the kids says, I saw a sign. Let's see what it is. Pickers wanted. So we became migrant workers, picking raspberries in Gresham, Oregon.
Oh, my word.
Yeah.
That is, how long did you stay then?
Just a couple days, 2 or 3 days, I don't know. But they pay you right on the spot. You had to have gloves because of the prickly on the raspberry. Sure. And so they give you like a pint, or maybe it was a quart. I don't know. But you pick them, fill it up, give it to them. They give you the money, and you work until you think you got enough money for the day, and then you go do touristy stuff.
And that is just fantastic. But what fantastic life experience for those boys.
Yeah, and I always look for opportunities. Here's another interesting story. I tried to get a visa to run a marathon in Algeria, and I couldn't get a visa. But there was a Spanish group, a charity group out of Spain that was supporting the Sahrawi people, which were refugees after Morocco invaded Western Sahara. The Sahrawi people were discriminated against, so a couple 100,000 of them went into Morocco and lived in refugee camps. And so we had to pay some money for the entry fee, and then we went and actually lived with some of the refugee families. So we stayed, there was a 2-room mud hut, nothing in there but like a bed on the floor. And then the refugees gave up their mud hut and went and slept in tents. And so our situation was just these 2 rooms in mud hut, 3 women in one, 3 guys in the other. No toilet. You'd have to go outside, kind of around back, and just a hole in the ground to use the toilet facilities. And then our breakfast typically consisted of a piece of bread and tea.
Wow.
That was our breakfast. And then once in a while, we might get an orange, a piece of fruit of some sort. And then we ran through, there were four refugee camps, as I recall. And we just ran through the refugee camps. Of course, being grandfather that I am, I'm kind of slow now. And so I think, I don't know if I think I was close to last place. I might have been last place. And so I looked ahead, and there are a couple of kids waiting for me. And they're talking to me and trying to distract me. And a little kid tried to snatch the water bottle out of the back of my
Oh
water
my
bottle holder.
gosh.
So I turned around, and man, he took off running like crazy. And the 2 other boys kind of left. But the organizers were worried about me getting mugged. So I had a truck escorting me the rest of the way.
Oh my goodness. So how long ago was this? Because this sounds fairly recent.
Yeah, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I was
My,
70, I think I was 70 or 71 at the time. I'll be 76 next month.
okay. Okay.
So, but it's just there's different opportunities, and I don't threaten anybody. And what's interesting story in Africa, old people don't run. Life expectancy and many times is 40, around 40. Yeah. And so
Wow.
I remember running in when I ran, earlier this year, actually in June, I ran 2 marathons in the Republic of the Congo and Gabon. And so that
And
was
you think about those, and those are they sound like frightening places.
some places are dangerous, but the deal is just certain parts of the country, if it's dangerous there, then the whole country gets a black eye. The State Department says do not travel. On their list of 13 or 14 countries they say do not travel, I run marathons in 9 of them.
My goodness.
And I was running in, I don't remember which African country. And when I finished, I was literally mugged by young adults and kids. I had a dozen plus hands all over my body, my head, my arms, my legs. And I remember this one black kid going right in my face, "White man, this is not possible. My father's 40 years old. He's an old man and dying. What is your juju?"
What's your juju?
Juju, yeah, my magic. What's my magic? And what I do, I point it up and then I cross myself. And I said, if you want to know more about my magic, talk to me. So I share my faith whenever the opportunity presents itself. And
That's
so
amazing.
I had several experiences with the power and the fire of the Holy Spirit, where actually communicate with a higher power. And I can't
Do you,
really, in some ways, I can't explain it.
mhm.
I kind of get chills, and it just stops me in my tracks, and I try to listen. So, for example, and if I get too off here, just redirect me. But for
Okay. All
example,
right.
in 2020, my wife thought I had dementia, Alzheimer's. 2019. Oh, 2019, she corrected me, because I didn't have any symptoms other than memory loss. I asked her, "Where's that place I keep my money?" I couldn't remember where my bank was. And
Wow.
so went and jumped through the hoops, and the MRI, and there was a tumor the size of my fist right here. And so Dr. Beer here in Cheyenne did the surgery. It is benign. It's called a meningioma. It's a slow growing tumor. It takes 15 to 20 years to get that big.
Oh my goodness. So you've been living with this tumor in your head for all this
Well,
time
for
and
a
you had
bit,
no
yeah, for a
idea.
bit, yeah. And so Dr. Beer, I asked him before the surgery, I said, when will I be able to run a marathon again? He says, well, if everything goes okay, in 2 months. So they did the surgery. I was in and out of the hospital in 48 hours. I
That's
remember the
incredible.
last pain pill I took in 2020 was a Tylenol when I left the hospital. Haven't taken a pain pill since. And so for the first month, I was on a treadmill downstairs, and they only let me walk 2 minutes at a time, and then gradually upped it. And then the next month, I could go outside and walk. And so went for my follow-up with Dr. Beer, and he gave me the green light. 3 days later, I left for Yemen. Ran the marathon. Actually, we ran a 10K in Yemen. We ran a marathon. Then we were supposed to do an aquathon. But you probably remember, we were there March 17th. What happened March 17th, 2020?
The pandemic.
Yeah, the
Hello.
lockdown. So they woke
Yeah.
us up 3 o'clock in the morning and said, we have to leave. They're locking down the country. So we flew from, it's a kind of a World Heritage Site, the island of Socotra. They have unique endemic species found nowhere else in the world. But we flew to the mainland, and we're stuck at the airport for 9 hours. And we thought, oh man, this is not good. And we were literally the last flight out of Yemen. Got to Cairo 3 days early, tried to change my ticket on United, and they wanted $5,000. And I said, well, so I just stayed at the hotel. I was at a Le Meridien, right, hooked up to the airport. So I just stayed there for 3 days, and
Yeah. Chilled out. Yeah.
yeah.
Spa
I was
day.
on the concierge level, and free breakfast, free booze in the evening, and hors d'oeuvres, and so it was fun.
Yeah. Yeah. A little getaway there, a forced
Yeah,
getaway before the rest of the world
yeah.
went crazy, right?
So yeah, and I literally have hundreds and hundreds of stories I could tell you about things like that running.
That's amazing. So let's talk the numbers here. Let's talk numbers. How many marathons have you participated in?
There are 403 marathons as of this date, and 60 ultra marathons. Well, and some of those are actually multi-day stage races where you have to carry everything you need to survive for a week. They
Whoa.
provide medical, a tent, and water. Everything else, you're on your own. So
S-
you start out, your backpack weighs about 30 pounds, and then it gets lighter as the race goes on. So typically they'll have a 6 stages, sometimes five, 6 stages, where you run anywhere from maybe 30 kilometers to 50 miles. And typically what happens, they'll have two ultra marathon stages. You run a 50-mile one day and a marathon the next day.
My
Then they
goodness.
then they fill in. Yeah. And I just did one a couple years ago in Mozambique, in southern Mozambique. And that's when I first started realizing I shouldn't do these extreme events anymore, because the last stage was 30K, and just walking and with my trekking poles, I fall down, break 2 ribs.
Oh no.
Yeah. So
Wow.
so
So
I'm trying to
you're winding down your career a little bit then in
yeah,
that
yeah, I'm
way.
trying to stick to road races. Some trail races if they're like on gravel or dirt, but I definitely am trying to avoid steep downhills with rocks and roots, because I'm trying to prolong my running career, and I've given up maybe a dozen activities. I used to do high altitude mountaineering. I was a rock climber, ice climbing. Um, you know, I sold my mountain bike, sold my motorcycle. Um, so
So now you're just running. You're just
yeah,
running right now.
so 2 years ago, I was doing this 50K trail race in Brunei.
Where is Brunei? I don't even know where that is.
It's a small oil-rich country. The Sultan of Brunei at one time was the richest man in the world.
Wow.
It's
Okay.
on the northern part of the island of I want to say Malaysia.
My
And
goodness.
so so I show up, and the race director, people are kind of looking at me like, no, I didn't know how tough the race was. And only for me, only about 10% of it was runnable. We had cables, we had to climb up rock faces. We're running on knife ridges where if you fall off, you're down in the jungle and the crocodiles and the snakes and everything. So the first loop, it took me over an hour, like an hour 50. And there was one guy that already dropped out. And I thought, okay, this is not going to work. So I dropped out, and there were about 60 people that started, and only 20 finished.
My goodness. So you
And
were not
so,
the only one dropping out of that one.
no, so I'm at the airport, and the race director calls me. He says, "Oh, you forgot to get your medal." I said, "Well, I didn't finish." He says, "Oh, it doesn't matter. You're the oldest guy to ever attempt our event." So
That's fabulous.
I got a chuckle out of that. So my friend that lives in New York City, he organized a marathon the next year because he was one of the ones that dropped out. JC Santa Teresa, and he organized one the following year along the promenade of the waterfront. So he just did multiple out and backs along the waterfront. So that was very easy,
Beautiful.
doable. Just the heat and the humidity primarily.
You have been so many places that, again, we don't even know exist. Like, who's heard of these countries?
Yeah.
How, even before you retired, because you retired from teaching in 2010, before you retired from teaching, how many of these countries and how are you able to bring your students and bring your world experience in to your students? Because what you're doing now and the experiences that you're having, you're sharing them with us. But wow, it just seems like your students benefited so much from your experiences.
Well, things really started steamrolling after my friend Michael Pearson taught science at McCormick. He was one of the 10 finalists for Teacher in Space. And he coached me, and he says, "Weiner, you're missing so many opportunities. You know, you're bilingual, you have a PhD. There are so many fellowships, scholarships, and grants. You could have one every summer." And that's what I started doing. I got some Chrissy McCullough Fellowship. I got People to People International. I got Korea Foundation. I lived in Seoul for a while. It's the Blue House. Was actually stepped. There's the international border between North Korea and South Korea goes through the middle of the Blue House, and that's kind of like the DMZ. And there's a North Korean guard on one side, South Korean guard on this, and so you can go across the line. I did that, and I'm talking to the soldier. And I said, "Am I in the North Korea?" He says, "Yes, sir, you are. But if you touch that door, I will have to shoot you."
Oh,
So I said,
whoa.
"No," I said, "I'm not going to." But that was a real fun experience. They discovered with ground penetrating radar, there is a huge tunnel under the DMZ into South Korea that if North Korea wants to invade, tanks can actually fit through that tunnel. And so what South Korea has done, they've wired all the overpasses with explosives. So if there's ever an invasion, they just blow all the bridges, all the overpasses, and so the tanks will be in the swamps and the forests, and that'll slow them down enough for some kind of reaction.
My
So,
goodness.
so
The
all these,
things
all
that
these
you've
opportunities,
learned,
yeah, all
the
these
things you've
opportunities.
learned.
And so
Yes.
what I would do with my kids then, every summer, I try to take them someplace. And we used a group out of Salt Lake City called EF Tours. And so that's when we took them to New Zealand, Australia. Our two boys went on some of the trips, to Mexico, Washington, D.C. And like I said earlier when we were visiting the Soviet Union, the
Right.
USSR. Yeah. And so
My goodness.
I've actually, when the Soviet Union broke up in all the 15 republics, I've actually run marathons in all 15 former Soviet republics.
My word, what again, the accomplishments here. Now, I want to let people know that we're recording this early because in just a couple of days, Brent is going to be taking off to go to a new location where he's never run before. And Brent, tell us about where you'll be when this podcast airs.
I will be in Oceania, aka the South Pacific, and many countries don't have marathons, so I organize the marathons there. So I've organized one in Nui and in Vanuatu. And then I have friends that have organized marathons. The Tonga Animal Welfare Society is going to have one in Tonga, and we'll run that one. And then about a week later, we're running one in the Solomon Islands that's sponsored by the Solomon Airlines.
My word.
And
So
so,
this takes us to a different direction and a different nuance because you have organized runs. You organized, I think it was the one and only one that only ever raced marathon in the Vatican. Is that right?
correct. Yeah, and I had no permits. I shouldn't say this now. Had no permits, no insurance. Uh, Trying to do it under the radar. We didn't have bib numbers. And we're there, and we're standing in St. Peter's Square next to the obelisk, and some of my German friends, knuckleheads, had made a banner and unfurled it. It's a Vatican Marathon, and the guards are on the gate, and they're looking at us, and I'm just waiting to get arrested, right? And so they just waved. The
Okay.
week before, the Pope declared the Vatican athletics team nuns on the run.
I
Yeah.
love that.
And so we ran around the square, then we went out and ran around the entire country of Vatican City, like 3 kilometers, down to the Tiber River in Rome, back and forth on the Tiber River. And so then I found out about a 10K fundraiser the next day. It was called Corsa de Miguel, that started and finished in the Rome Stadium, where the Olympics were in 1960. And so I went to register for that, and the guy had heard about the marathon. He said, "Oh, you are VIP. We comp your entry." They assigned me a handler, made me start in the first corral with 28 and 29-minute 10K runners. And I'm trying to move back because I don't want to get trampled to death, right? If I fall on a trip. And so that was fun. And
That was fun. Oh my gosh. And
but
did you do something in Antarctica too? Am I
oh,
remembering
thank
that
you for
right?
asking. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was actually sponsored by the state of Wyoming. I organized the one and only marathon to the geographic South Pole. And I had hooked up with a company called Adventure Network International, and they said, "Well, we'll consider it. We're going to fly you down and want you to check it out and write us a report," because I'm a consultant, running consultant. And so they ignored everything I said. I said, "The first year, let's just run it around the camp called Patriot Hills." That camp is no longer in Patriot Hills, at a place called Union Glacier. And so I said, "Well, just run around." "No, no, we need to go to the South Pole." And I said, and then I said, "Everybody should bring snowshoes in case the terrain requires that." And they didn't want to do that. And then they wanted to give $25,000 prize money because they wanted to get an Olympic runner, a world class runner. And I said, "No, no, nobody's going to risk, their career for that." And so we had the race. I had a satellite phone. Every day I'd report to my kids. They were
Yes.
they were tracking us, and I'd ask them questions, about things like penguins and snow, ice, science that's going on at the South Pole. Like they were researching neutrinos because the neutrinos can go through the ice much easier than through the ground and stuff. And so, and the thing like pictures, for example, they have to move the South Pole every year. Did you know that?
I did not know that. This is
Yeah,
news.
because the ice is creeping towards the coast. It's a glacier.
Oh.
The
Yep.
2 mile thick ice cap. And
So
so
they have to
just
pick up what they consider,
move it.
the
Yeah.
marker and move it
And
because
bring
the glacier
precision.
that the marker is on is
Yeah.
moving.
Yeah. And when you're there, you can actually look down at some of the previous years. You can see the posts sticking out of the ice. Um,
How interesting. And again, what a benefit to your students to have this globe-trotting teacher that's not just showing you a spot on the map, but bringing you either to there or standing there while you can talk to him. What a gift.
And we did, and they really got their money's worth out of me, because later we had it's called WEN, WEN, it's the Wyoming Equality Network. And so it was broadcast to all the classrooms around the state.
Did you have a satellite phone from the governor?
Yeah, because the governor had loaned me a satellite phone that I took to Antarctica. And so
Oh
that
my goodness.
that was kind of the payback. Yeah, and one of my students qualify for the National Geography Bee, so we got to go to the governor's office and visit with him for that. And I think
My
it was who was governor? Mike? Sue was
Mike
it?
Sullivan?
Yeah, I think Mike Sullivan was governor at the time.
That
Because
is just
because
great.
I met a lot of the governors. I'm not. It's interesting. My major was in political science. That's what I had most of my hours in.
Garinger, wasn't it?
Or maybe it was Garinger. It might have
Oh,
been
Jim
Governor
Gehringer?
Garinger.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't remember.
but you got to meet them all. So yes. So I just, we've talked for so much and there's so many more stories. I just wanted to say, Brent, what is it, if we were to wrap up, because you've got stories that could fill hours and be entertaining for hours. When you look back at your entire career, when you look forward to the races that you're going to continue to run, what is it, I guess, out of all of these things? Can you sum up your experiences? There's no way to sum it up in one phrase or one sentence, but is there a highlight to all of this, a purpose, a mission that you feel like you've been on all of these years?
Well, I think guys in general need a challenge. They need something to keep them busy, and so I like the challenge. There's kind of magic in the misery of running a marathon. And
You
you
need to put that on a t-shirt. There's magic in the misery.
and you push through the pain. And when I was coaching, I try to convince my cross country kids that you need to be successful, really be successful. You have to become comfortable being uncomfortable, and that the pain is just, it's a nuisance. It's like a fly. Just swat it away. Don't dwell on it. Don't think about it. And I had all kinds of cutesy sayings like, uh, when it's too hot for everybody else, remember, guys, it's just right for the McCormick cross country team. And then,
That's
then
great.
I do the same when it was really cold out. And
Yeah.
so fun story. How much time do I have?
Well, I think we got time for another. Give me one more story.
Okay,
One more story.
this is a hilarious story. So we'd always we'd have state junior Olympics, and we'd have regional junior Olympics, and then we'd have nationals. And so I took kids all over the country for nationals. So one time, regional junior Olympics up in Rapid City, South Dakota, always had lights out at 9 o'clock, no exception. And so the coaches and I are sitting around the swimming pool. I think it's a Holiday Inn. And here comes three of my knucklehead girls in their 90s. And they go, Coach, is it lights out yet? And I said, you know it is. You get your butts back in bed. I said, tomorrow after the race, you're going to run the course again for discipline. And
Ooh.
don't be pulling this stunt again.
Oh my gosh. And did they?
They
Of
did.
course.
They
Oh my
did. And
goodness.
so what's interesting is for my brain surgery, one of the ladies in the surgical center was one of those girls.
No way.
Yes.
And
And
so
she asked
she
me,
said, Coach, what are you doing here?
she says, do you remember when you took us to St. Louis to National? I said, oh yeah, I have lots of stories about you guys. And so that's kind of fun. And she's married and has a couple kids, and we're friends on Facebook. As many of my former students are, I've stayed in touch with them. When I retired, one of my little knucklehead kids sat in the back of the class. He goes, Dr. Weiner, I Googled you last night. You Googled me? I said, well, you can stay after class and tell me all about that. He said, no, sir, you're famous. He was afraid to be tardy, so I'll write you a pass. So he came up to my desktop and showed me how to Google myself. That's when I found out I am the only person in cyberspace with my name.
Really?
Yeah,
There's
at that
nobody else
time,
in the world with your name?
nope. 3,000 hits at that time. When Google used to tell you how many hits, the last time I Googled myself, over 200,000 hits. And
Wow.
and now they don't tell you how many hits. So if any of the listeners want to know more about me, knock yourself out. Just go to Facebook or to Google and Google my name, and you can start. It's a long list of articles and books and talks, speeches, races, marathons. So you'll probably get bored after 15 minutes, but unless you're a marathoner or you're a teacher looking for tricks, then you might take something away from it.
Yes, because
Because
you
I
have,
tell, yeah, and you asked me how I define myself, kind of. I think the only thing you really take with you when you die is what you've given away while you're alive.
absolutely. And you've given so much away to your students, to your fellow marathon runners, to the state of Wyoming. We have just been entertained and educated here in the last however much time we've been on this. Brent, thank you for
Oh,
your
my
time and your
pleasure.
experiences. And thank you for sharing all of this. And we are all better for what you have experienced. We've been able to glean from that.
Well, thank you, Wendy. Thanks again for having me on, and God bless you. Have a fantastic day, and good luck to all the listeners if they tune in. And if they want to contact me and have questions about anything, I'm happy to share.
Brent is on Facebook, Weigner, Brent, and find him on Facebook. I love your posts. I love your memory posts. I love your posts about you and your wife Sue's adventures. And that's just been really, really exciting and fun to be able to keep up with. Folks, these are the kinds of people that we have in the cowboy state. People like Brent and who are out there doing amazing things and sharing them with us. And we are so proud to claim you as a Wyomingite, Brent. Thank you so much. And folks, thank you for tuning in. Remember, we've got so many great interviews that we've amassed over the last year and a half, close to 2 years now. So go back and find some of these great interviews. Also, make sure that you look Brent up, Google him. He's the only one out there. And find out more about his adventures. Brent, good luck in your next set of marathons that you're going to run and races that you're going to run. Folks, don't go away. Tune in next week for another great, great Wyoming character on the Roundup. Have a great week.